$4 million. That is the amount that the winner of the LK Boutique 250k challenge will be taking home. It is the biggest prize in Australian sporting history. Players come from all over the world to take their shot at landing on this final table. And we are now down to 4 players after losing Max Altegot, Eric Seidel, Fabian Quass and Tom Dwan. Not very often will you see a final 4 like this, and one of them is about to be crowned champion.
Everyone, and welcome to Crown Melbourne. Now we're at the final table of the Aussie Millions LK Boutique $250,000 challenge. But while we're outside here at Southbank, there's so much fun, we're in the sun, it's great. But I'm more excited about getting inside as there's an estimated $4 million up for grabs for the winner. Pretty exciting stuff. Just gives you an idea of how tense things are going to be.
And there they are, the 4 remaining players in the LK Boutique 250k challenge. You've got Phil Ivey, Ike Haxton, Mike McDonald and Daniel Negreanu. I sit aside. Grant Levy, 2007 winner of the grand final APPT. Grant, looking at those names, what are you thinking?
Well, it's pretty evenly matched, Paul. 4 outstanding players with wonderful records. Been around a long time. I'm excited for the next hour.
It's pretty rare you get to see Phil Ivey and Daniel Negreanu, who, but by the way, between them have got around about 40 million in prize money. You don't get to see them at final tables all that often.
Yeah, well, I mean, they make plenty, but they don't make too many together. So to see them in a tournament together, sparring, they've been sparring for years in cash games. It's great to see.
As we've been chatting, Mike McDonald folded around to him. He picked up pocket threes, picked up an enormous stack and put Ike Haxton all in.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty standard spot here.
I call.
And he's called, so the very first Daniel gets out of the way, so Ike Haxton turns over ace-9 of hearts, and already we have a flip in our first hand.
Expensive flips.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard spot. Folds to Mike on the button with a pair. 2 shortish stacks in the blinds.
You're gonna hit 3 of hearts and lose.
Ike with the suited ace high. It's definitely a call there with his stack. He's got about 13 or 14 bigs.
Well, Ike Haxton,
I think you'll lose if that's the case.
he is the all-in player. What will the flop bring? And there is a 9 in the door. A 9-5-4 flop, so Ike Haxton grabs the lead.
It's a really good flop for Ike, obviously. Mike now needs to look at find a 3, or he's got a couple of backdoor draws.
Here comes the turn. It is a 2 of diamonds, always a sweat.
Yeah, turn always brings a sweat, Paul, and you hear Daniel Negreanu, interested bystander in the background, having a bit of a chuckle.
Yeah, it's true. 3 of hearts.
3 now, no good for Mike.
Or ace on the river.
1 card away. And the river is a king of spades, and Ike Haxton will double through Mike McDonald. We still have 4 players.
It leaves Mike pretty short now, Paul, just a few big blinds. He's going to need a little bit of luck from here. Just unlucky losing that flip, but tournament poker sometimes just comes down to who can flip the best towards the end.
Well, Ike Haxton is now counting out his chips. Mike McDonald looking on, seeing how much he's got to cough up for the loss of that flip. And Ike Haxton, well, he's been our chip leader for most of this tournament. He's been on quite a ride. There is his player profile. He lives with his wife in Malta. Very interesting guy. I've met him a couple of times. He's made a bunch of World Series of Poker final tables. Grant, you've played with him. He's a very interesting character.
Yeah, he's almost eccentric, actually. He's a different kind of cat, but he's always fun to play with and usually doesn't shut up. He's and as you can see, he's become jovial again. It helps when you win a flip.
Oh, the action's on Mike McDonald. Now the short stack. He moves the rest of his chips in. And a pot around about $500,000. It folds around to Daniel with pocket 5s. Look at this. Mike McDonald's actually got pocket kings.
Yeah, just a few big blinds and wakes up with kings. Daniel Negreanu looks down at fives and thinks it's the stone cold nuts against a 3 big blind raise, which, you know, usually it is.
He makes the call, and Phil Ivey hasn't moved other than his hand playing with his chips. You never know what Phil's thinking, but he's going to throw some chips in the middle as well. So he makes a raise. Back to Negreanu now. He's trying to isolate Mike McDonald.
It's actually a tough spot for Negreanu. He's got a pair. Mike's shove is for a very small amount, less than a couple of big blinds. And Phil doesn't need that strong a hand to be raising here. Daniel hasn't shown any strength just by calling Mike's shove. Phil thinks he can isolate and get Mike heads up, thinking Mike doesn't have a lot of chips. He's probably got a pretty average hand. Little does he know Mike's sitting there with kings.
They're almost contrasting styles, but they almost think the same at times. Daniel Negreanu making the call, often animates and talks about what he's thinking, whereas Phil Ivey, you get the sense, is saying almost the same thing, but not saying anything. Mike McDonald seems to be arranging a cab or something because he's looking down at perhaps his phone or something. I'm not sure what he's doing, but he seems not interested in the fact that there's a $4 million first prize. He's got pocket kings. He's in good shape, and we don't know what Phil Ivey's got.
Well, Mike's just sitting there texting his mate saying, I'm in with kings. These idiots have both called me. I'm going to triple up. Get back in the game.
Well, the flop is 8-6 deuce, so that means Mike McDonald, who is the all-in player,
That's 500,000.
is in good shape to triple up here. Phil Ivey's placed a bet to try and get Daniel out of the pot. His pocket fives wouldn't be that bad on that flop, surely.
Yeah, but it's a tough spot for Daniel, actually, because Phil's 3-bet pre-flop, and he's leading at the 8-6-2 flop.
Well, that's an interesting card too. Daniel now with a straight draw. He called the flop bet of Phil Ivey.
And to be honest, with a bet and a call on the flop there, Mike's starting to get a little bit less comfortable with the kings, especially against these two guys on a 6, 7, 8 board.
The river, a jack of spades.
Check.
Fives.
Oh my god.
Can I get ace 8?
Huh?
Just from my hand. Yeah.
And look at that. You wouldn't see that every day. Phil Ivey declaring that he misread his hand. Daniel will take the side pot, and Mike McDonald has tripled up.
And Ike Haxton, for some reason, finds it hilarious.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you do not see that every day. The best player in the world misread his hand. He is human after all. Don't go away. We'll be back with the LK Boutique 250K Challenge at the Aussie Millions.
While Melbourne is famous for its laneways, it's probably Hosier Lane that stands out the most from the bunch. It's been attracting street artists and graffiti artists from around the world for the past 20 years, and it's a top tourist destination. So let's go find out a little bit more from the expert, Dean Sunshine.
Hosier Lane and Rutledge Lane, they're probably the most graffiti-laden lanes you'll find in all of Melbourne. And it's incredible because you do not see this in countries around the world where they have a full laneway that's given up to street artists and graffiti artists to come and do whatever they want. Graffiti and street art is probably one of the biggest art movements in the world today because it's not ruled by money. And this is the beauty of it. You can see artwork in this lane by artists that are selling things for thousands of dollars in a gallery. Yet you can come here in the lane and see it for free and appreciate it.
So if you're looking for an alternative to Melbourne's art galleries, then go exploring, because you'll never know what artwork you might stumble across in the ever-changing canvas that is Hosier Lane.
And there is the leaderboard at the LK Boutique 250K Challenge. Mike McDonald tripling up in that last hand. He's still got a lot of work to do as our short stack. Daniel Negreanu now sits atop of our leaderboard with just a little under 5 million in chips. Phil Ivey misreading his hand, very rare to see. He slipped a 3.5 and Ike Haxton is a 2.7. Cards are in the air. $4 million first prize. Action on Daniel. He gets out of the way, as does Phil. Round to Mike McDonald. Our short stack. Will he pull the trigger?
Well, I mean, he doesn't need a great hand here.
Well, he does pull the trigger. He's moved all in. Over to Ike now.
He's only got 4.5 big blinds.
Ike calls. He doesn't look happy about it.
You know, it's almost a spot of calling. It's calling with a very wide range here. It's getting almost 2 to 1.
Probably wouldn't recognize your equity with.
Oh, both players almost having a bit of a giggle about the quality of the hands they had to put it in there with. We know Mike McDonald has King 3 offsuit, King high. Ike Haxton, we're about to find out what he's got. Jack 3 off. Well, he's got Jack 3 of diamonds, so he's dominated in this hand. Mike McDonald, again, in very good shape. Here is the flop. It is a 9-5 deuce flop. That doesn't change anything.
A little bit.
Yeah, Ike would have just been hoping that he had 2 live cards. Unfortunately, he's only got the Jack that's live.
Just a drop.
The turn, a 7 of hearts. Remembering now that Mike McDonald lost a very, very big hand to Ike Haxton. Then he triples up, and now, well, the river's a king of diamonds, so now he doubles up.
He's almost back in the game. He probably wants one more double up just to get above 20 big blinds. But he's certainly with a fighting chance here.
He sure is. He's moving in the right direction. Mike McDonald is not done yet. Let's take a look at the leaderboard as he collects his chips and puts them back in the pile where they were in the first place. Here it is. Mike McDonald moves up to 1.2 million. Ike Haxton now slips a little bit to just over 2 million. Phil Ivey and Daniel Negreanu leads the way. 4.65 million in chips. Who will win the $4 million first prize here at the LK Boutique 250k challenge at Crown Melbourne? The action is on Ike Haxton, and he looks down at King Jack offsuit.
And Daniel Negreanu's gone about his business pretty quietly. He's now the chip leader. He was short earlier on in the day, and he's survived and survived and survived. Finally turned a profit after the 6th place was finished, and now he's looking to win $4 million.
Ike
opens for 235,000. Daniel and Phil both fold round to Mike McDonald on a bit of a roller coaster thus far.
Again, very deliberate with his action.
Well, we know Mike has Queen 9 of clubs.
C3 moves all in.
And he moves all in. So once again, Ike and Mike are mixing it up. It's over to Ike Haxton now.
Yeah, they've been sparring a lot. And Ike makes the call with a king high.
Wow. Well, Mike McDonald making a pretty bold move with Queen 9 of clubs, and Ike Haxton calls with King Jack. What do you think of that play?
I think it's a good call. Mike shoved with about 12 bigs. We're only 4-handed. 2 Broadway cards, King Jack. I think it's the right call from Ike, and he's in front.
Well, Mike McDonald was ahead in both the hands where he tripled up and doubled up. He's not in this hand, but have a look at that. There is a 9, a 5 and a 3. Mike McDonald, he spikes his 9.
A bit of poetic justice. Ike sucking out with the worst hand earlier. Mike trying to get his own back here.
The turn is a 4 of spades.
Nothing for Ike. He needs a king or a jack. Otherwise, Mike's going to be right back in the game.
1 card away from another double up. What a turn of events. And the river is another 9. It's the 9 of diamonds. So Mike McDonald continues to climb. He has doubled up again.
Yeah, in the space of about 5 hands, he's gone from 2 big blinds to 26. He's a huge chance of taking this down now.
My experience at this entire event has been very limited. I didn't play the main event. I didn't play any of the prelims. I just landed the morning of the 100K and then literally, flew for 24 hours to be in Melbourne for 4 days to fly 24 hours back. And since I've run good in both the tournaments, I haven't really done anything. I went rock climbing the one morning before playing, but that's about it as far as actually leaving Crown. This is an extremely tough final table, as is usually the case in these super high rollers. Yeah, everyone plays really well.
Welcome back to the LK Boutique 250k Challenge. Mike McDonald, our former short stack, now sits on top of the leaderboard with over 3 million in chips. These guys have been trading blows, and as it stands, Ike Haxton 3.4 also just behind him. Phil Ivey with 3.1, and Daniel Negreanu, who was our leader not so long ago, is now our short stack at 1.4 million. And the action is on, Daniel. He lets it go round to Phil Ivey, and he gets out of the way. Mike McDonald.
Mike and Ike, they've been trading blows pretty much this entire second half of the final table. Let's see if they're going to go to war again here, Paul.
Oh, he's picked up a big hand. He's picked up pocket nines, and he's raising.
Raise.
Yeah, that's a monster hand in the blinds.
325,000.
Over to Ike Haxton.
Ike's been pretty loath to fold his big blind today. Even when he's been out of position, he's going to be in position this time. The effective stacks are a little bit shorter now, so he's not going to be as liberal.
Oh, look at this. He's got king-queen off suit.
Well, that's also a monster blind versus blind. This could be an interesting pot, Paul.
Well, he's making the call. So, you know, in the past few hands, they haven't done this. They've got it all in pre-flop, but now we're seeing a flop. The flop is a 10, an 8, and a 3. That's a pretty good flop for Mike McDonald's hand.
Yeah, he's certainly got to like that flop. Ike didn't 3-bet pre-flop. Pocket nines. There's only one overcard to that.
He places a bet of 300,000. Mike McDonald always takes his time. There's that Mike McDonald stare we know, and there's that sort of slouch that Ike Haxton does. But I wonder what he's thinking right now, Grant.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's going to fold. He's got two overcards, pretty strong. Mike obviously has raised pre. He's always going to continue, considering Isaac didn't play back it in pre-flop.
Well, Ike reaches for some chips.
There's a fair amount of them too. Looks like he's cutting out a raise here. It's an interesting play. I certainly don't think he'd be raising a 10 here. So I think he's trying to represent the draw. Obviously, Mike's got two blockers to the straight draw here, but he can be representing the flush draw.
Putting the pressure on Mike McDonald is Ike Haxton, raising to 725,000. Mike McDonald doesn't look like he's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think he's going to peel and reassess on the turn here.
He does, and he looks away. The turn, a 4 of spades, 3 spades now.
And Ike holds the king of spades. That's really going to help him continue with the hands here. He's just picked up a lot of equity. He's got the overcards, and he now has the flush draw. And as I said, Ike was representing the draw on the flop. Flush has just come in. Mike's not really going to like that card.
Well, he checks, and now it's over to Ike. And he moves all in. So now back on Mike with a big decision.
Now, it's always very important when you're running a bluff that it makes sense. Now, on the flop, Isaac was representing a flush draw. The flush comes in. He has slightly less than a pot size bet, or slightly more than a pot size bet. It's pretty natural that he shoves here if he has made the flush. Obviously, Mike has a 9-high flush draw, but he can't really think that that's good. And I think when Mike thinks this through, he might let his hand go.
Well, we kind of expected Daniel and Phil to be trading blows, but instead, it has been Mike and Ike Haxton going at it.
These two are very good players. They've probably got a little bit of history going back in the old online days. They've both been playing for a good 6 or 7 years online. Very good post-flop players. And Isaac's pulled the trigger here, and I think he's made a good move. He's going to get away with it. If he does get called, however, he obviously still has a bunch of outs. He's got 30%, as you can see on the graphic there.
Well, Mike McDonald, yeah, you could almost see that Mike McDonald felt that he was ahead, but he couldn't make that call. That was a really, really good poker from Mike Haxton.
Only to the camera.
Well, we're seeing some really good poker now.
So this is a battle of the blinds between Timex and Isaac Haxton. Timex goes ahead and raises with 9s, and Ike, of course, calls with the king-queen. Flop comes 10-8-5 with 2 spades. Good flop for Timex, and he goes ahead and bets. I really like the play here from Ike to raise with king-queen. He's representing, a 10, maybe, a straight draw, flush draw. He's really got nothing, just the king-queen. But he feels like if Timex maybe has just an ace-high hand or something, he's going to fold on the flop. Timex makes a good call here with the 9s, and they go to the turn. The turn card comes a spade. Timex has one, but Ike has a bigger one. He checks, and now Ike decides to go all in, and I really love this play because it's very unlikely that Timex has a hand strong enough to call. If he did have a nut flush draw or a set or something like that, he probably would have played it fast on the flop. So a really good bluff from Ike and a tough spot for Timex.
And back to the action. We are still four-handed in the search for a champion of our LK Boutique 250k challenge here at Crown Melbourne. And the Aussie Millions, one of the biggest tournaments in the world.
1.7.
Biggest names in the world, Ike Haxton. Action is on Ike. And Daniel Negreanu announces all in. He's moved in on Phil Ivey. And Phil Ivey's quickly called. So Daniel with ace-deuce offsuit. And Phil Ivey, we're about to find out what Phil has. He also, oh wow, he has ace-king of hearts.
That's really unlucky for Daniel. He's got 13 big blinds. It folds to him in the small. Looks down at an ace. Obviously a very strong hand in the blinds. And he's just run into a pre-flop monster from Phil Ivey. Needs a deuce.
4.
Well,
Wheels down there.
Phil Ivey doesn't move very much at the table at the best of times, just sitting back, watching it all unfold. Daniel Negreanu is our all-in player, so he would be eliminated. He bought in for around 750,000 lazy dollars, and look at that, the flop, 10 deuce 6. Daniel grabs the lead.
We haven't seen the best hand hold up very often pre-flop. Phil needs to catch up now.
Will Daniel survive and double up the turn? A jack of spades. More outs.
Well, what a shock. The turn brings more outs.
Well, he only needs to survive the river, and he will double up through Phil Ivey.
He wants to see some paint.
And the river's a king. Unfortunately for Daniel, he is eliminated.
Look it. I really thought I was going to win. I didn't think you were going to hit.
Unfortunately, Daniel eliminated in 4th place. He will take home $1.25 million for his troubles.
I don't know if I'm necessarily playing better, but definitely playing luckier. I don't think too much about it. When I sit down to play, I buy in, and if I bust, if there's rebuys available, I'll generally take that if I feel like it's worthwhile. And, obviously, it has been for me this trip. It was definitely a crazy turn of events. I was looking comfortable for a while. I was a chip leader, but it seemed like everybody who went all in just kept winning. And then you have that deep feeling in your thought, like, is it going to be you the first time you go all in that loses? And no. Then the deuce came. I'm like, good, it's not going to be me. But then it was me. Well, I had fun. I mean, talk about roller coaster rides. From a range of emotions of being in for 5 bullets in 100K, cashing, sweet, and then blowing it all by buying in 3 times into this thing, and then, recouping that loss, and then, of course, losing when I had a shot to win the $4 million. Just a whole big swing of emotions. This, playing poker for a living isn't for the faint of heart, because you really go through a lot of crazy swings, especially at these stakes.
Welcome back to the LK Boutique 250k challenge here at the Aussie Millions. We are so close to crowning a champion. 3 players remain. Phil Ivey, the best player in the world, sits atop of our leaderboard. Ike Haxton, not far behind him with 4.4 million. And Mike McDonald, who has survived and gone on a roller coaster, is still in there with 1.7.
Mike now on the short stack, 14 big blinds, folds to him in the small. Hoping for a hand that he can go with, get it in pre-flop.
And Ike's body language facing Mike is almost expecting him to move in. He does move all in.
I call.
And Ike Haxton calls. So McDonald with 10-8 off suit. And we're waiting for the graphic to come up to tell us what Ike Haxton called with, but he didn't waste any time.
Yeah, the fact that he got called that quickly, you'd really be hoping that he's just live here and not up against an overpair or dominated.
And wow, we see ace-king offsuit, so he does have him dominated, especially when it comes to the suits.
Yeah, but he still has 2 live cards, so it's not too bad a situation here. He's still got 35% equity.
Here we go. And the flop is 6 deuce deuce. That's no help for Mike McDonald. He is the all-in player. He's survived so much. Can he survive again?
And he still needs a 10 or an 8.
Not really, king.
And the turn, a 6 of diamonds. That's no help.
I'll take an even card.
Even?
Mike McDonald, 1 card away from elimination.
Yeah.
Can he pull a rabbit out of the hat? No, he can't. The river, a 3 of hearts. He is eliminated in 3rd place. Well, he played really well, Grant.
Yeah, $1.9 million. It'll buy a few more Lamborghinis for him. Some custom license plates.
Well, that's a very good showing at the LK Boutique 250k Challenge, 3rd place for $1.9 million.
I think there's a lot of, information that's given away at the table. And I think that, trying to observe as much as you can is pretty beneficial.
And with Mike McDonald's elimination, they are playing for that beautiful LK Boutique 250k Challenge ring. We are now heads up. Ike Haxton versus Phil Ivey. 2 of the biggest names in the world of poker. Phil Ivey has been the biggest name in poker for such a long time, and he remains there. I mean, how hard is it? Grant, you tell me, you've won big tournaments. It must be so hard to continue to stay so great at this game. You need to work at it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to stay relevant in the game, you have to really just keep up to date with all the changes. The game evolves just every year. It becomes harder and harder to win. And the fact that Phil's been winning, since Adam was a boy, then, it's pretty amazing.
Well, we're going to begin with some fireworks. Ace Deuce versus Queen Jack.
240 more to call.
Offsuit. And he makes it 240 back at Haxton now.
2 legitimate hands heads up. Isaac with position. Likes to play some post-flop hands for sure. And Isaac's used to playing deep stacked heads up and deep stacked short-handed games online. They're not overly deep here, but certainly deep enough to play all 3 streets.
Very contrasting styles and personalities, for that matter. Let's see a flop. And look at this. Deuce, Deuce, King. Well, lucky for Phil, he missed that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil Ivey was the aggressor pre-flop. You'd expect he continues, and he does. Over to Ike Haxton. He's going to like that.
Yeah, well, obviously Isaac's going to like that. It's a really good flop for his hand. And Phil will be thinking, well, Isaac shouldn't have a deuce here. Little does he know he does, and he's in a little bit of trouble.
Oh, just making the call on the button. In position, the turn, a 10 of diamonds.
It's a good card for Phil. Picks up the open-ended straight draw. The ace is a pretty bad card for him. He makes his straight, and Isaac will make a full house. So that could be a pretty significant river card.
Well, Phil Ivey checks now.
Isaac wants value for his trip, so he will bet. There's no way Phil's going to fold now that he's picked up a decent hand with lots of equity.
Bets a $500,000.
And I think Phil just might call and see a river card. Hopefully make his straight.
And that looks like a call. So you're right, Grant. We're going to see a river, and the river is a queen of diamonds.
Yeah, well, that card might just get Phil in a little bit of trouble. I can't see him folding here.
Oh, Phil Ivey checks.
Check.
And Isaac's just thinking, how much value can I get from this hand?
All in.
All in.
Wow, Ike Haxton moves all in. And Phil Ivey now with a decision.
Well, it now makes it a little bit easier for Phil to fold. Isaac calls the flop, bets the turn, and now all in when the flush gets there on the river. And Phil's just got a pair of queens. When he thinks this through, I think he's going to put it in the bin. Very methodical. He'll think about it for a while. But it's pretty rare that Phil comes up with a mistake.
That's one of the things about Phil Ivey you can always count on. He will think through every hand. You just love to get inside his head for 5 minutes and find out what's going on in there, but he usually makes the right decision. Will he make it this time? He does look curious.
Isaac pretty stoic, not giving anything away.
So much at stake. Bit of a sigh there from Phil Ivey.
I think he really wants to fold. Yeah.
He does fold, and he takes a little bit of a stare at Ike Haxton as if to say, I wonder what it was you made that move with. And I'm sure when he sees this, he's going to have another think about it. But Ike Haxton takes a very nice pot from Phil Ivey. And we are one step closer to crowning a champion at the LK Boutique 250k challenge at the Aussie Millions. Welcome back to Crown Melbourne for the LK Boutique 250k challenge. We are heads up. One more elimination and we will crown a champion. Isaac Haxton sits atop of our leaderboard with a commanding lead over Phil Ivey, but he's that kind of player, Grant. He's the kind of player that can do anything.
All my money's on Phil. He's the all-time greatest. He does have a chip deficit here, but you're never going to count out Phil Ivey in any situation.
Ike Haxton with the button, the action's on him. He makes a raise. You'd expect him to keep the aggression up. Phil Ivey looks like he's reading a book, but I'm sure he's thinking so many things. Haxton with 7-6 offsuit, and Ivey with 4-5 offsuit will make the call.
This could be an interesting hand. They've got each other's straight outs.
Well, they're in the same neighbourhood. Let's see whether the flop will put them together. The flop, a 5-4 deuce flop. What a flop.
Check.
Yeah, well, that's about as action-packed as we can get with these two hands. Phil with the 2 pair and Isaac with the open-ended straight draw. Perfect flop for both. And they'd both be sitting there very happy here.
Well, Phil checks. Action on Ike. He fires. 265, almost half pot.
Yeah, it's exactly half pot size bet here. Could see a pretty big pot here. Phil's got to think, well, how do I get the maximum amount of chips off Isaac here? And I think the right play is just to call and let Isaac keep bluffing. But he's going to cut out a raise, and I'm not going to question Mr. Ivey.
He announces 650,000. He's going to make the raise right here. Can't imagine Ike's going anywhere, though. Oh, wow, and Ike Haxton moves all in. And Phil Ivey calls, so they get it in at the flop. You said that the pot could escalate. It certainly did, Grant.
Yeah, certainly. I can't fault either player, to be honest. There's a couple of different ways to play this hand, but once Phil raises there and Isaac's got the overcards and the open-ended draw, it's a pretty strong hand heads up, and I'm not surprised to see the chips in.
We are 2 cards away. If Phil Ivey gets beaten in this hand by Ike Haxton, he will be eliminated. The turn is a 5, though, and Phil Ivey gets a hammerlock on the hand with a full house.
That was great.
And Isaac just hits his straight on the end just to rub it in.
Well, a very big double up for Phil Ivey.
2-8.
And he's counting out his chips for the double up. Let's take a look at From the Vault. Here you'll see some footage of 2012. Patrick Antonius and Phil Ivey in exactly the same event, the Super High Roller. Antonius catches bottom pair. Phil Ivey with ace-queen. He hits the turn and the hand holds up. Phil Ivey stands up, shakes Patrick's hand and takes down the title. He is one of the most successful players in the world, and that is why. He has ace-queen, he has the ring, he's got the smiles, and he's got a very, very big prize pool. He's trying to do it again here in 2014. This would be a remarkable run. Phil Ivey's still collecting his chips from the last hand, and he has the button. And looks like he's made a raise. Over to Ike with 7-10 of diamonds.
Ike has Phil dominated here. Both with a suited 7. Strong hands.
And Ike
Another 2
has 3-bet Phil Ivey. Of course, Phil with position.
Yeah, Isaac does the right thing, 3-betting out of position. Wants to take the lead.
Cool.
Phil will call. So once again, they're in the same neighbourhood. We could be seeing fireworks if the flop does what the flop does. Let's have a look. The flop, a 5-8 jack flop, 2 hearts.
And not a lot for Isaac there. He does have a gut shot. Open-ender for Phil. So a little bit for both. Phil obviously is going to be pretty pleased with his hand. It's not going anywhere.
Ike, the aggressor pre-flop, looks to continue that. Pot's about 720,000.
Now, obviously, Phil looking for a 4 or a 9. Little does he know, a 9 is not a good card for him.
With that bet, makes the pot 1.2 million, a bet of almost $500,000.
If Phil calls here, the pot swells to 1.6. And we're getting into playing for stacks territory.
Cool.
And he makes the call. He has position. He's made the call. And we take a look at the turn. It is a 4. So Phil Ivey, he strikes his straight on the turn.
Massive card. Now gives Isaac a double gut shot. Gives Phil the straight.
He's out of position. He has to move first. This is the importance of position in poker. People underestimate the importance of position.
And Isaac with about 4 million.
Checks it over to Phil. Phil looks like he's going to continue. Trying to build this pot up.
Betting 7.
700,000 is the amount. Now back over to Ike.
Isaac's got a double gut shot here. I don't think he wants to let it go.
All in.
And he announces all in. And of course, Phil Ivey quickly calls. So Ike Haxton tries to take the initiative on the turn and make a move.
Wow, that's a big play from Isaac. He's just run into the nuts, which is unfortunate for him. He does have outs. He's got a double gut shot. 9 will give him a clean win. 6 will chop the pot.
Well, if we don't see a 9 or a 6 on the river, Ike Haxton will be eliminated and Phil Ivey will win it again. And the river is a 6 of hearts.
Wow.
So they chop it.
That's very unlucky for Phil. He thought he was going to lift the trophy again.
Oh, look, he was so close.
So we try not to have a heart attack.
Well, Ike's beautiful wife in the audience, tears in her eyes, and all this excitement. It's got to be very, very hard on the family. So close to crowning a champion at the 2014 LK Boutique 250k Challenge at the Aussie Millions. Welcome back to the LK Boutique $250,000 challenge at Crown Melbourne during the 2014 Aussie Millions. What an event it's been. 2 players remain, Ike Haxton and Phil Ivey. First prize is $4 million. And there you see the leaderboard. Ike Haxton sits atop just ahead of Phil Ivey. These guys have been going at it for a while now. Let's rejoin the action. You can see the blinds there are 80,000 and 160,000. Some pretty famous names on that final table leaderboard, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great final table. A lot of big names, a couple of Hall of Famers there. Still a bit of play left in this one. They're 30 big blinds deep, which is a decent amount heads up.
Phil Ivey, and that looked like pocket kings.
T3 raises to 350.
Pocket kings. You're as good as Phil Ivey. You get heads up for a 250k buy-in event, and you just dealt kings. It's a nice life.
Ike Haxton makes the call. Pot's around 700. He's got 10-9 offsuit. He could wind up in trouble here. And the flop. It is an 8-5-5 flop. So, well, nothing really there for Ike.
Not much there for Ike, but he has been pretty tricky post-flop in this heads-up battle.
Well, both players go check, so Ivey really hoping he catches. The turn is a king.
Well, yeah, Ivey caught that pretty hard, Paul.
Well, we didn't think he was really going to lose this hand, but that turn really made sure of it. Now the question is, I mean, it's all good to have big hands, and you would know so much about this, Grant, is how do you extract from the other player? And look at this. Ike is reaching for chips. This is exactly what Phil wants. What's going through Phil's mind right now?
Yeah, well, I like the check back on the flop. Check back on the flop just opens the door for Ike. Phil hasn't shown the aggression or didn't continue with the aggression on the flop. And Ike thinks he's done with the hand and decides to take a stab. And obviously, it's a tough one because you want to build a pot, but also you don't want to lose your opponent.
Now, we're just confirming that that was in fact a call from Phil Ivey. And it was a call, so we go to the river. It is a 6, a black 6 of spades. So now Haxton needs to bluff at it. And look at this. He's reaching.
Yeah, well, the flush has come in, so I guess he's trying to credibly represent a flush or a 5 or even a king.
Well, little does he know what he's bluffing into.
Yeah, Phil Ivey has just about the stone cold nuts here.
Wow, and that looked like a bet of exactly pot, 2.1 million.
He actually did that on the turn too. He actually led for a pot-sized bet on the turn, and he's leading for a pot-sized bet on the river.
Ivey must be thinking Christmas is here. How do I get any more out of him?
Well, Haxton only has 3.1 million back, so I mean the natural thing for Phil to do is shove here. Isaac's showing so much strength. Obviously, he doesn't have the hand.
And he announces all in.
3 moves all in.
Isaac doesn't have the hand, and obviously he's going to fold. But
yeah, what a very costly pot that was for Ike Haxton. And you got to hand it to Phil Ivey. He really disguised that hand very well.
Yeah, well, it all come back to the check back on the flop. It really was a green light for Isaac to bet.
Well, Phil Ivey really flexing now. The best player in the world heads up, and he is in the lead. It's going to be very hard to see Ike catching him from here, but you never know. In this game, it's quite incredible. A $4 million first prize, and of course, Phil Ivey won this event 2 years ago. A $250,000 challenge. And it looks like Phil Ivey has picked up ace-6 offsuit and throws some chips in the middle.
Yeah, ace high for Phil. Limps the button. A bit of pot control. Wants to keep the pot small. He does have hand that has a little bit of value. And Isaac, as we've seen already, likes to 3-bet out of position. So Phil's just wanting to keep the pot a little bit smaller.
Well, Ike with 7-8 offsuit, really taking his time. You're right, Grant. He's taken
All in.
aggression every time he's out of position. He announces all in. And Phil Ivey with a big decision.
Well, that's a big shove, but Phil with the ace high. It's very good hand heads up. Isaac shoved for around about 15 bigs.
Well, Ike Haxton counting out the chips, and Phil Ivey announces call. So this could be it.
Yeah, it's a good call from Phil. He disguised his hand with the limp. Isaac showing aggression as he has done out of the small blind out of position. And Phil Ivey's made a good call and the right call.
Well, Ike Haxton really needs some help here. The flop, a king, an ace, and a 9, and Phil Ivey strikes an ace. He is 2 cards away from taking down the title.
He needs a lot of help. Phil holding one of the blockers with the 6 for Isaac straight. Phil's in really good shape here.
Here comes the turn. It is a 7, so there are outs.
Yeah, he picks up trip outs and 2 pair outs here. He needs a 7 or an 8 to stay alive. Otherwise, Phil Ivey's going to win this tournament again.
Can he do it again? The best player in the world. And the river is a 3 of spades, and that does it. Phil Ivey miraculously wins the same event 2 years ago, and now he's won it again. He is the champion of the LK Boutique 250K Challenge. He wins the ring, he wins the plaudits, but most of all, he wins $4 million.
This is your LK Boutique Aussie Millions Championship ring. Congratulations. Now, Phil, this is your biggest live cash ever. You've won this event 2 years ago. You also won a bracelet in the World Series of Poker Asia Pacific last year. You must love coming down here to Crown.
I sure do. It's my favorite casino.
We love having you here as well. So where does this rank in all the events that you've won so far? Your biggest live cash, this must be up there.
This is the number 1 for me. I mean, this is the second biggest event on tour, besides the $1 million one drop. So this is as big as it gets.
That's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating the LK Boutique Aussie Millions $250,000 winner, Mr. Phil Ivey.
And there it is. Phil Ivey is crowned a champion for the second time in this event, and what a battle it was. Phil Ivey has been regarded for so long as one of the best players in the world, and there is a reason. He did it quite hard at this table. There you see Daniel Negreanu. He was eliminated in 4th place. Mike McDonald, as he exits stage in 3rd. Phil and Ike Haxton go heads up, and Phil Ivey is the champion of the LK Boutique 250K Challenge here at Crown Melbourne.